I'm the one that's supposed to kill him. These are knives. He wants me to stab him. Wants me to murder a child.
It's not a child.
How can he know that? Maybe he's wrong. It's insane. I won't do it.
The Jews return to Zion, and a comet fills the sky. The Holy Roman Empire rises, and you and I must die.
On this night, Mr. Thorne, God has given you a son.
Just have him examine him.
Well, he's perfectly all right. Never been sick a day in his life.
I mean, no measles, mumps, chicken pox. Not even a cough or a cold.
You must take communion. Drink the blood of Christ and eat his flesh. For only if he is within you can you defeat the son of the devil.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
He's killed once. He'll kill again.
She fantasizes that your child is alien, that your child is evil.
She thinks that the child is evil?
I was at the hospital, Mr. Thorne, the night your son was born.
This is not a human child. Is there proof?
He bears a birthmark, a sequence of sixes. So says the Bible to all the apostles of Satan.
If it is not visible on the body, it will be beneath the hair.
From the eternal sea, he rises. Creating armies on either shore. Turning man against his brother. Till man exists. No more. I want Damien to die.
The Omen hit the big screen on the 6th of June in 1976 in the UK and arrived in the USA on the 25th. Directed by Richard Donner, who had been a successful TV director since 1960. He did have a stab at directing 3 feature films in the 60s with X-15, Salt and Pepper and London Affair, also known as Lola. They didn't fare well at the box office and he returned to TV, but it was The Omen that gave him his big break to move on from TV to feature films. The Omen had a pretty small budget for a Hollywood production at only $2.8 million. It would go on to gross over $60 million, making it a huge success for 20th Century Fox, who were desperate for a hit. The marketing got everyone excited, billboards with a countdown to the end of the world. It built a strong curiosity factor with the public. It would be Fox's biggest opening weekend of all time, and wound up being the 6th most popular film of 1976. The writer David Seltzer would get to do the novelization, and he had it on stands 2 months before the movie came out, and it's still being published today. The reviews were generally positive for The Omen, though a number of critics saw it as a cash-in on the success of The Exorcist, which had been a huge hit for Warner Brothers 3 years earlier. The Washington Post declared, "It's probably the classiest Exorcist copy yet, but as a summer thriller, it can hardly challenge the human appeal and exhilarating impact of last year's Jaws." Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel were impressed by the firepower soundtrack and several memorable scenes, but found the story goofy. Though it didn't make their list of the worst films of 1976, it did get an honourable mention. Barry Norman for Film 76 said the film was handled well and praised the performances. Barry denied the film was 2 stories in one and was clearly about satanic possession, and not about a form of madness, which Richard Donner claimed it to be. Barry was puzzled why The Omen couldn't have been funded by the British film industry, as the film took advantage of the UK talent, and all the profits were sent back to the USA, and none to prop up the fledgling UK industry. Cine Fantastic magazine weren't that impressed, saying, "In a cast of misspent talents, Gregory Peck leaves a note of austere solidarity to his role, while poor Lee Remick is given nothing to do beyond bug her eyes and take pratfalls from high altitudes." Billy Whitelaw has a juicy introductory scene as a spooky, soft-spoken nanny sent by the agency, and David Warner looks properly bemused as the photographer who loses his head over little Damien. The automated feel of the cast is really no surprise when one considers that Donner and writer David Seltzer are more concerned with directing their audience than the actors. As an ad for The Omen reads, "You have been warned." Due to the film's success, 3 sequels would follow, a remake and a prequel that was released last year. And even a TV show called Damien was broadcast back in 2016, which only lasted for 1 season. The sequels and prequel will be discussed later in the video. There was talk of the Omen curse due to a number of bad accidents and dangerous moments. The cast and crew had their planes struck by lightning, engines on the plane being damaged, you had a zookeeper being mauled by a lion or a tiger, reports never officially confirmed which one it was. IRA bomb attacks at restaurants and hotels. The most shocking moments occurred when a plane they intended to film with, but had decided not to at the last minute, crashed when a flock of birds flew into its engine, killing everyone on board and the wife and child of the pilot who were driving past at the time. Harvey Bernard said the devil was at work and he didn't want the film made. The special effects supervisor John Richardson, who had wrapped on The Omen to work on A Bridge Too Far, was driving through the Netherlands with his assistant and then girlfriend Liz Moore. A car then hit them head on. John's face was shattered, but he survived, but Liz was sadly killed, very much like the photographer Jennings' death scene in the film. This happened on Friday the 13th, with the collision not far from the town Omen. John said he didn't believe the film was cursed, and there was some strange incidents, but it was down to pure bad luck. Looking back through the old newspapers, the curse was brought up in 1978, when Damien Omen 2 was in production, and producer Harvey Bernard mentioned these bizarre accidents, which I think he had hoped would boost the PR for the film. But The Omen wasn't bad luck for 20th Century Fox. With a financial hit on their hands, it helped them fund Star Wars. Throughout the golden age of cinema, the Bible has been a source of inspiration for filmmakers, with many biblical epics being lavishly put on the silver screen. But come the 1960s and the shift in culture with the rise of the hippie movement, there was a renewed interest in religion, and people began to look towards the dark side of the Bible and Satan, and the forewarnings of his return to tell new stories, to capitalize on the horror genre. The first big hit was Rosemary's Baby in 1968 by Roman Polanski, where Mira Farrow's character gives birth to the devil's son. Audience was shocked by the story's simple premise. Having these dark things happening to regular people that could be your neighbours made it more terrifying. Come the 70s, William Friedkin would direct The Exorcist, where a little girl is possessed by a demon. Based on the popular book, it was a massive hit and was banned in the UK for a long time. And the 1970s brought on a new wave of paranoia and fear about the devil, and the rise in fundamentalist Christians. A new devout Christian and advertising executive, Robert Munger, believed in the prophecy in the book of Revelations. Robert had the idea of the devil already being amongst us in the form of a child, which he thought would make a great film. Robert presented his idea to his friend and film producer Harvey Bernard, who had made a name for himself in Las Vegas, promoting shows, and made the move into Hollywood and produced 2 successful blaxploitation films, and had never dealt with horror before, but loved the idea. He had seen the success of The Exorcist and felt audiences would love to see something of a similar nature, and went away and wrote 15 pages. With an outline in hand, he needed a screenwriter. He approached David Seltzer, who had success working on documentaries and had done uncredited rewrites on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Harvey said to David, "Can you write me another Exorcist?" He turned it down initially, but changed his mind after reading the Bible, which he had never read before. He thought it was full of wonderful stories. As Jaws was a talk of the town in 1975, David was going to write the script and treat it straight-laced like Jaws, so it wouldn't be seen as a joke. He found the phrase "the beast shall arise from the eternal sea," which he interpreted as revolution and turmoil, the world of politics, and found the symbol of 666 and made it a birthmark, and he was off and running. He titled the script The Antichrist. Harvey took the script to all the studios and it got turned down. They said it was too frightening, so he enlisted the help of producer Mace Neufeld, who managed to get Warner Brothers to greenlight it. Things started moving forward, they started location scouting, and a director was attached called Chuck Bale, who was a stuntman by trade, but had just made his directorial debut with Black Samson in 1974 for Warner Brothers. Harvey and David both had Gregory Peck in mind for the lead role, but other actors were considered, such as Oliver Reed and Charles Bronson. Warners at the time were developing The Exorcist 2, and felt The Omen's religious themes and the direction for The Exorcist sequel were too similar, so they put The Omen on hold. As Warners had to make the film within a year of optioning the screenplay, and they still hadn't put the production back into motion, the producers got the rights back, and Neufeld then passed on the script to Richard Donner. Donner loved the script, and got into contact with his friend Alan Ladd Jr. at 20th Century Fox. Alan was impressed with it despite Fox originally turning it down, but Alan was concerned about the script's over-the-top satanic imagery. Donner said it would be scaled back, and Alan was happy and greenlit the project, giving them $2.8 million and 11 weeks to film it. Donner said to Seltzer, "Everything you see has to be believable. The deaths and situations could be freak accidents." He went ahead and made those changes, and the title of the script would be renamed to The Birthmark. For the cast, we have Gregory Peck as Robert Thorne. A number of actors were also considered for the part, but it was in the hands of Fox. Roy Scheider was offered the part, as he had just been in Jaws, but he declined. Charlton Heston was offered the part and turned it down, not wanting to spend time in Europe in the winter. William Holden was offered the role, and he also turned it down, and later regretted it and signed up to Omen 2 to play Robert's brother. They submitted it to Gregory despite having reservations as his son had just committed suicide, but to their surprise, he accepted the role. Gregory said in an interview with Cine Fantastic magazine, "After 4 or 5 failures in a row, it was getting to the point where I was being offered Yugoslavian-Italian co-productions, and I figured it was time for me to get out, at least for a while. I really didn't mind because I had 25 years of reasonable good success and good fortune and all the rewards that go with it, which is already a long career. So I thought, okay, well, I'll retire. But I still loved picture making and I wasn't ready to abandon it altogether, so I turned to producing. But then suddenly The Omen came along and held my interest like a good pulp thriller. Sure, it had some loopholes, but their answer to that was that Hitchcock's films always have holes you could drive a truck through. If you try to patch up every hole with conventional logic, you get into expository scenes that nobody wants to hear. Lee Remick plays Catherine Thorne, who becomes the suffering mother of Damien. Lee was a familiar face of the 1960s. She received an Academy Award nomination for her role in Days of Wine and Roses. After The Omen, she did appear in another horror thriller in 1978 called The Medusa Touch. Come the 1980s, she moved away from the big screen and would find roles in TV movies. She sadly passed away of cancer of the kidney in 1991 at the age of 55. Harvey Spencer Stevens would be cast as Damien Thorne, a challenging role to cast, with over 500 boys auditioning for the role of Damien at Pinewood Studios. In stepped Stevens, who was 4 years old at the time and had curly blonde hair. The producer liked him, but Donna wasn't sure, so he got the boy to attack him, taking a scene from the script where Damien attacks Catherine. Stevens reportedly clawed at Donna's face and kicked him in the balls. He had to get Harvey's parents to help him stop. Donna was impressed with his attitude and he got the part. They straightened his hair and dyed it black. Harvey would not go on to have an acting career, only appearing in a TV movie in 1980. He would, however, have a cameo role in the Omen remake as a journalist. David Warner plays Jennings, a freelance photographer who has been covering Thorne's activities. He begins to notice issues with his photographs that link to the death of 2 people who have come into contact with Robert. David was already a seasoned actor on the big screen and found a lot of success in the 80s and into the 90s, such as in Time Bandits, Time After Time, Tron, and of course Titanic. British actress Billie Whitelaw plays Mrs. Baylock, the demonic nanny who is there to protect Damien. She had been acting since the early 1950s and had a wealth of experience on film and TV. Her final role will be in Hot Fuzz as Joyce Cooper.
Hag.
I beg your pardon?
Evil old woman considered frightful or ugly. It's 12 down.
Oh, bless you.
Patrick Troughton plays Father Brennan. Patrick was a huge star of TV, but to many of a particular age he was Doctor Who, appearing as the second incarnation. Outside of TV, he popped up in classics such as Jason and the Argonauts, Sinbad and the Eyes of the Tiger, and a couple of Hammer horrors such as Scars of Dracula. He would sadly pass away in 1987 due to heart failure. Martin Benson was cast as Father Spoleto, who gives Richard his new child, and would later be injured in a fire, and would reside in a monastery severely burned, mute and blind in one eye. Martin was often cast in supporting roles as a villain, and had a career spanning 6 decades. Leo McKern plays Carl Bugenhagen. Though bizarrely uncredited in the film, some reports said he could take a higher fee for waiving his on-screen credit. Leo was an Australian actor and best known for his roles in Richard Lester's Help, Ryan's Daughter, The Blue Lagoon and The French Lieutenant's Woman. He would work with Richard Donner again in Ladyhawke. Leo would return for Omen 2, but only for a small role for the opening act. Holly Palance plays the nanny who looks after Damien at a young age, but soon becomes under the spell of the devil and commits suicide for the boy. She loved working with Donner, as he was full of energy and kept people laughing on set, so it didn't feel like they were making a serious horror film. Holly would work with Donner again to help the casting of Superman, as she played Lois Lane when Christopher Reeve auditioned. Holly was the daughter of Jack Palance, and would only appear in a small number of films and TV shows before retiring. Principal photography began on the 6th of October in 1975 and lasted for 11 weeks, wrapping in early January the following year. With large chunks of it filmed in the UK, they made use of Bishop's Park and the All Saints Church in Fulham. Both the Guildford Cathedral and Thorne's Country Manor were filmed in Surrey. The church used in the final climactic scene was St Peter's in Staines-upon-Thames, so it should be quite easy to get to those locations if you're based around the London area to recapture those scenes from the film. They would also film in Jerusalem and Rome for the opening and third act. While filming in Rome at the hospital, there were signs saying "Do not speak loudly," the birthmark filming. Women freaked out by the name birthmark. They tried to explain to them that it was just an omen, so they changed it from birthmark to the Omen, and it stuck. For some interior scenes and the graveyard where they discover the origins of Damien and get attacked by the dogs, they made use of Shepperton Studios. The dogs on set were so timid they had to hide meat on themselves to get them to attack. Director of photography Gilbert Taylor was semi-retired in 1975 and was living on a farm. Donna really wanted to work with him, but Gil didn't seem that interested. But after a short chat, he got him on board. Donna was planning to shoot the movie in the 1:85:1 widescreen format, but Gil Taylor wanted to shoot in the 2:35:1 format. Donna was unsure with a wider format for two people having a conversation. He felt it would be a waste of space within the frame, so together they went around London and filmed some footage, and once Donna saw the dailies, he was impressed. Donna said Gil was great to work with and a delight. Once they finished filming, George Lucas phoned up Richard Donner and asked what Taylor was like. He recommended him, and shortly after filming on Star Wars, Gil Taylor phoned up Dick Donner and said, "What have you got me into? These kids don't know anything. It's like a comic book," which Donner found very amusing. For the scene where Catherine's car is attacked by baboons, they tried to get them to attack by having a baby baboon in the back of the car with a zoo official and placing food on the car to get them angry, which didn't work despite not feeding them the night before. So the zookeeper official swapped out the baby baboon for an alpha, which sent the baboons bonkers. According to Dick Donner, the terror on Lee Remick's face was authentic. Editor Stuart Baird, who would help out with some of the second unit footage, nearly got hurt trying to wind up the baboons. In John Richardson's book, Making Movie Magic, he discussed working on The Omen, saying, "My effects budget was less than £25,000, which included my salary, my crew's salary, transportation, equipment, rigs, mechanical dogs, everything." With the death of Father Brennan, it was a cheap but tricky effect to line up, of a plastic rod going down a wire placed slightly behind the actor as he pretends to be impaled by it. It happens so quickly to the untrained eye, it looks like it goes through him. As Catherine falls from the balcony, Lee refused to do the stunt. The FX team devised a camera trick where the wall becomes the floor. They stuck on painted sardines to look like goldfish, a rug and a plant pot to the wall, and put Lee on a dolly where she is standing up. As she goes away from the camera, they turn the dolly so it looks like she hit the floor. A very clever and simple effect. The most challenging scene was the death of Jennings, where a sheet of glass cuts his head off. David Warner refused to watch this scene being filmed. John Richardson said the most difficult element was lining it up so the head was cut off and spun in the air. It was shot from multiple angles, making use of 6 cameras to get the desired effect. For the finale with Robert Thorne being shot, Donner wanted the bullet firing out of the gun in slow motion. He had thought of the idea years before, wanting to feature it in a TV special, but never got the chance. The production team found a missile tracking company that built high-speed cameras and asked them if they could shoot a gun going off, and the guy said, "Yeah, I guess so. We never have, but I don't see why not." To shoot at that high speed, the intensity of the lights made it impossible to hold the gun, so they made a glove covered in asbestos to reduce the heat, so the performer could pull the trigger. They did 3 takes and had no idea what it looked like, but once Donner saw the dailies, he was excited like a child, as it worked perfectly. Gregory Peck had some issues with the script, saying, "Personally, I thought that Thorne was far too intelligent to accept a substitute child without even asking to see his own dead child, and without looking into the background of the adoptee, and certainly he would have told his wife about it. Also, Satan could easily have substituted his child for hours without telling Thorne about the switch. The Thornes would have been innocent victims of the conspiracy, but I was not the producer or the director. They acknowledged the logic, but they felt they wanted to establish an ominous mood from the outset." The studio screened a rough cut of the film and they were pleased with it. The ending had Robert, Catherine and Damien all dead. It was supposed to be ambiguous. While Donner was having dinner with Alan Ladd, Ladd suggested the idea of the kids still being alive, and Donner said that was a great idea, and Alan gave them some cash to quickly shoot the iconic ending where we see Damien is still alive, and he turns to camera with a straight face, but Donner kept saying, "Don't laugh," and when Harvey began to smile, it gave them that chilling ending. The film opens in Rome with American diplomat Robert Thorne rushing to hospital as his wife Catherine is about to give birth. He speaks with the hospital's father, who informs him his son has died. Distraught and unsure on how to tell his wife the bad news, the father persuades Robert to secretly adopt another baby, who has no mother or extended family. Robert accepts the child and they name him Damien. 5 years later, Robert is now the ambassador to the UK and living in London. They celebrate Damien's 5th birthday, and suddenly the nanny calls out to Damien and publicly hangs herself. They discover no motive or drugs to suggest she was under the influence. Father Brennan comes to the embassy and warns Robert about Damien's origins, hinting that he is not human and insisting Robert take Holy Communion. Robert doesn't believe his nonsense and has him removed. Back at the Thorne mansion, a new nanny arrives named Mrs. Baylock. Catherine wasn't informed of her assignment, but Mrs. Baylock persuades them to let her take care of Damien. She introduces herself to him and tells Damien she is here to protect thee. Damien starts acting violently, especially towards his mother, as he resists entering a church. And animals at a safari park are terrified by his presence. Father Brennan visits Robert again and tells him that Damien is the son of the devil, and that his wife is pregnant, and Damien will kill his unborn child. Robert is not interested in the father's wild stories and wants him to leave him alone. Shortly after Robert leaves, the weather turns bad around Father Brennan, who flees to a church to hide as lightning strikes close by. As he struggles to get inside, he is impaled by a lightning rod. Robert finds out Brennan is right and Catherine is pregnant and she wants an abortion, which he opposes. While Robert is at work, Damien knocks Catherine over the banister as she attempts to hang up a plant, and she slowly loses her grip and falls to the floor below, injuring her and causing her to miscarry. Robert is called by photographer Jennings, who has been photographing Thorne over the last few weeks outside the embassy and at Damien's party, and he captured a few photos of Father Brennan and started noticing strange remarks in the photographs of the nanny and Brennan that foreshadowed their deaths. Jennings shows Robert the photos along with news clippings and biblical passages the father kept suggesting the coming of the Antichrist. Robert needs answers, and he and Jennings head to Rome to investigate Damien's birth and the location of his biological mother. The score to The Omen would be provided by Jerry Goldsmith, performed by the National Philharmonic Orchestra and conducted by Lionel Newman. Donna had wanted Jerry on board after he and Harvey went to a concert where Jerry played his famous movie themes. Jerry wasn't cheap at the time, and Alan Ladd gave them some extra cash to pay for Jerry at $25,000. The producer Harvey passed on the script to Goldsmith, but he really struggled to come up with a particular idea and theme. According to Goldsmith's wife Carol, the composer was stuck on what music to write until one evening when he suddenly happily announced to her, "I hear voices," referring to an orchestral chorus or choir. The standout piece of music was the song Ave Satani, which is deployed as the film's main theme and would be used again in the sequels and even the remake. Jerry wanted to create a kind of satanic version of a Gregorian chant, something like a Black Mass, inverting Latin phrases from the Latin Mass. The choir master, who was an expert in Latin, helped him come up with some phrases. The song in its entirety had lyrics that are an inversion of the Roman Catholic rite of the consecration and elevation of the body and blood of Christ during the Mass. Jerry's wife Carol also penned and performed an original song called The Piper Dreams. When Richard Donner first heard the score being performed, he said it gave him chills. Jerry Goldsmith had been nominated for an Oscar so many times over the years, but had never won, and had no desire to go to the award ceremony that year to face another disappointment. He said he was an expert at losing, but he won, and it really surprised him, as he was up against two Bernard Herrmann scores, and he had just passed away. Jerry would go on to receive numerous nominations throughout his career, but would never again win an Oscar, which is pretty shocking. The score was pretty spectacular for the time. It's dark and brooding, it has the horror elements to make the audience jump, and has a wonderfully written love theme that really tugs at your heart when Robert goes back to the house after Catherine has died and goes to the bedroom and has a moment to himself as he remembers her before he grabs Damien. Jerry didn't just do a traditional horror score. The use of the charts and chorus really unsettled people at the time. Jerry was never comfortable watching horror. He's scared easily, but managed to write incredible music to really scare the audience. And he does a lot when the movie isn't showing you any real threat. He amplifies the psychological underpinnings to leave the audience tense or concerned something is about to happen. The score has been re-released multiple times over the years and is easy to get hold of. It even turned up as a special feature on the Laserdisc, so you can watch the film with just a score, and this option would be carried over to the DVD and Blu-ray. Now, before we get to my thoughts on The Omen, let's have a chat about the sequels. In 1978, the sequel followed with Don Taylor behind the camera, who replaced Mike Hodges after 4 weeks. Don was known for shooting fast and getting things done on budget. Richard Donner was unavailable as he was off making Superman. Damien, Omen 2, has the son of the devil as a teenager who attends a private military school. He begins to realise who he is and starts using his powers whenever someone annoys him or begins to discover his dark secret. It's not a bad sequel, but doesn't really have much going for it. It relies on the kills to keep the momentum up, and doesn't really have much fun with the premise. As it's the late 70s, there's plenty of old people wearing beige clothes talking in rooms with not much going on, though it does have some exciting phone action to spice up a scene. It does, however, come with another cracking Jerry Goldsmith score. This sequel didn't review particularly well at the time, and made half the amount of money the original did. In 1981, the third film hit the big screen called The Final Conflict, with Sam Neill in an early role for him as he plays Damien as an adult. His followers have grown in size, and has his power in the industry, and he sets about trying to kill the firstborn child as he anticipates the second coming of Christ, and he needs to stop him. A few clergymen have discovered the knives featured in the first film and intend to finish what Robert Thorne couldn't do years earlier. Directed by Graham Baker, and again like number 2, the film doesn't fully embrace Damien's powers, influence and mission to take over the world. It's all done very low-key and with not much flair, and ends up being an underwhelming finale to the series that started out so well. The reviews were pretty negative on its release, and despite making a decent profit of $20 million with a $6 million budget, it was a far cry from the box office numbers of the first film. Like Omen 2, Jerry Goldsmith returns with a new direction for the Omen series, giving the score an epic sound. If you want to know more about the Omen 2 and 3, you can find commentaries on my channel I did with Rob Hill, The Bad Movie Bible. The fourth film in the series arrived in 1991, which had some limited screenings in parts of the world, but was mainly known as a direct-to-video movie. This time it's about a girl called Delia who is supposed to be the Antichrist. She is adopted as a child by 2 attorneys. As she gets older, things aren't what they seem, as she shows signs of violence and people are generally creeped out by her. Her adopted parents attempt to trace her background to discover her real mother. The film is proper cheesy with some hammy acting coming off as more goofy than serious. When Delia attacks the bully with a lunchbox, it had me in stitches. Following the plot of the original, it does hit similar beats, though does deviate a bit as Delia is older than Damien as she attends school, but it doesn't offer that many surprises. It was universally panned on release, which is to be expected as it looks bland and cheap, and what you kind of expect from a TV movie from the 90s. Even though it's a bit rubbish and pointless, it is funny to watch and might be worth giving a go with your mates and some beers. You will get some laughs out of it, as it feels more like a problem child movie than an Omen one. Come 2006, Fox had the silly idea to produce a remake of the original and release it on June 6 in 2006 to reference 666. Directed by John Moore, who had directed Behind Enemy Lines but went on to direct 2 turkeys with Max Payne and Die Hard 5. This remake would prove successful at the box office, but critics hated it, calling it a pointless remake, comparing it to Gus Van Sant's Psycho. This new version of The Omen is completely shameless in its attempts to just redo the 1976 film. The iconic moments with the nanny committing suicide, the death of the priest and Catherine falling, they all lack the impact of what Donna shot. The whole film looks cold, as they poorly attempt to make the Czech Republic look like London. It is quite hilarious. Liv Schreiber sleepwalks throughout the entire film mumbling his dialogue, and Julia Stiles delivers perhaps one of her worst performances. The whole experience of seeing this remake was a frustrating watch, and seriously annoyed the hell out of me. I was a projectionist when this came out, and I wasn't that enthused to see it. I just thought it would have been cheaper for Fox to re-release the original film, and perhaps just remaster the picture and sound. Avoid this remake at all costs, it stinks. Last year they released a prequel to The Omen called The First Omen, set in the early 70s as it follows an American nun sent to work at a Catholic orphanage in Rome who uncovers a sinister conspiracy to bring about the birth of the Antichrist. I completely missed this film on its release and was very interested to see what it was like, and I was pleasantly surprised how good it was. Fantastic performances and production design. With it being a modern horror, it doesn't go too crazy with the jump scares, and it relies heavily on the creepy visuals that are inserted as visions that create a really unsettling tone. It has Father Brennan appearing, played by Ralph Ineson, who attempts to do an Irish accent, but his gruff voice does make his dialogue a little difficult to hear. I'm not a big fan of prequels, but this does line up nicely with the original film. But what made the film work is that it had a lot to offer in terms of setting up an interesting backstory as to why they brought about the Antichrist. It had some logic to it. Out of all the movies produced after the original, this is definitely the best one made. Some great filmmaking going on and worth checking out. I first saw The Omen when it hit DVD. I hadn't seen it growing up. I had of course heard about it, but it never came under my radar. I didn't even see it at my local VHS rental store. With it being a film from the 70s, the majority of the titles they had was anything from the 1980s onwards, aside from the obvious titles like Star Wars or Mad Max. So finally getting my chance to watch it, I was really impressed with it. I didn't find it that scary, proving pretty tame by what I had seen come my early 20s. But it certainly had a level of creepiness to it that stuck around in your head after you finished watching it. As I'm not religious in any way, I always found stories about the Antichrist really interesting. He is the oldest form of villain, and with so many films over the years dealing with the same subject, they always attract an interest for me despite the quality being hit and miss or not providing anything particularly new to the table. But it still proves intriguing to me. The Omen clearly came about due to the success of The Exorcist. Like any horror film that hit big with audiences, we always saw other filmmakers jump on the bandwagon. It happened in the 80s and the 90s. Scream, for example, kickstarted the slasher genre again, and others followed. So The Omen is another example of a reaction to the market, and thankfully it's really good, and not just a ham-fisted copycat pumped out quickly to make a quick buck as we've seen so many times before. Richard Donner was in his mid-40s when it came to making The Omen, having spent nearly 20 years working as a TV director, working on most of the popular shows and directing some of the most memorable episodes. He was by this point in his career highly skilled and experienced, and just needed to find that one script to give him that leap from TV to film, and The Omen gave him that chance to flex his creative muscle. What makes The Omen work is that it's grounded in reality. It's treated with a straight face, as Donner wants to create the impression that these odd events are not supernatural, but instead just bizarre accidents. There was a plausible explanation, but with an eerie twist. Now that twist can only go so far, as the supernatural elements clearly take over. To believe there is a form of madness with Robert and Catherine, to argue they have lost their mind doesn't really hold much weight, but Donner keeps the reality of these strange events for long enough to keep you second guessing. As the film starts, it already has a sinister tone, but switches it up as Damien grows up with light-hearted moments and music with a photo montage, which would have been served better with some 8mm home footage instead of photos, though I always laugh seeing that miserable old bag on the bus. Perhaps she knew the baby was evil. As the film has put you in a state of calm, the evil forces around Damien begin to emerge, and the dog appears to influence the nanny to hang herself, which has become one of the most iconic moments in horror. It flips the movie on its head and goes for full-on shock value, and it works big time. With it all being stunt work, it looks real and gets the impact it needed. Gregory Peck has such a great presence on screen and such a warm voice, it gives the movie credibility, and his approach to the role gives the film its serious edge. As The Omen is more of a thriller than a straight-up horror, the intrigue of where Damien came from and the explanation about these bizarre deaths, it's the highlight of the film. As we go on a journey with Robert and Jennings to Rome, this becomes my favourite part of the film. Damien, despite being the Antichrist, doesn't really have much screen time, which kind of makes sense, as he is too young, and it wouldn't prove that interesting to dedicate more time to him. Having adults deal with the situation and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together provides a far more satisfying direction than seeing a kid get up to trouble. Lee Remick, the tortured mother of Damien, does come across as a trophy wife for Robert. She clearly enjoys a life of luxury, buying a massive mansion for them and their child. Gregory was 60 years old at the time, and Lee was 15 years younger than him. As this was the 70s, film studios were very much in the mindset that everyone should be middle-aged or bordering on being a pensioner. No young people, thank you. Lee's character isn't fully fleshed out. She is just the wife of Robert, but she becomes the first to really notice something is not right with Damien, seeking help with a psychiatrist, and reveals her fears. Lee's strength in the role is her sheer terror, and with her amazing blue eyes bugged out, she probably deafened the sound recorder's ears as she screams at the top of her lungs, which works a treat, but also funny at the same time, as Damien pulls at her hair and seeing the baboons attack the car. Those who have been born with the 666 mark on them, which I presume makes them predestined to support the devil, as Father Brennan has it, which isn't really explained. The other father, who resides in a monastery, doesn't appear to have the mark, but as they both show signs of regret and want to be forgiven by Christ, I guess he has the birthmark as well, and I would assume Mrs. Baylock does, who has no doubts in her mind and is a full-on supporter of the devil, and is the most disturbing in the film and was designed to be from the get-go. As soon as she enters the frame, the audience instantly knows she is evil, which does leave you uneasy, as you don't know what she will do. Her polite but combative nature is a joy to watch, as she winds up Catherine as she fails to follow her orders and allows the dog in the house, despite Richard demanding she get rid of it. She seems to have the power to get away with anything, as Richard never seems to fully put his foot down. He has security at his gate, surely he can just get the police to boot her out. The shadows in the photos Jennings took give you the biggest clue to the supernatural elements. Seeing his own photo have the most aggressive mark on it honestly creeped me out the most when I first saw it. Jerry's score just highlights that moment so well. Jennings didn't seem too spooked at the time as he travels all the way to Rome. I would have stayed inside and made sure there was nothing around to kill me. What makes The Omen work is that it's a combination of a thriller and a horror, and not just a straight-up horror. Donner made the right decision to go with creating some suspicion around the deaths, so it wasn't so clear-cut. It could be supernatural or an accident, that's its strength. If it was just a straight-up slasher, I wouldn't find it that appealing, and I don't think it would have worked as well with audiences. Donner was a director who could tackle any genre, and do it effortlessly, thanks to experience with TV and tackling many different shows. He wasn't a guy who played it safe or could only do one type of film. He could easily adjust his style to fit the needs of the script. The Omen may not have the lasting impact or shock value of, say, The Exorcist, but it was still a movie that Fox were desperate to mine for sequels, but they never hit the success of the original. Which is often the case for all these horror franchises. The sequels never have the bite or the effective thriller aspects to keep you fully engaged. They end up being very formulaic. The 1976 classic demonstrates great filmmaking, it does great performances that are believable, and a score that leaves you unsettled. Despite the trappings of a 1970s backdrop and fashion, it doesn't feel dated, and I think that's why it still works and has remained a classic for nearly 50 years. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to click the like button and hit the bell to be notified of my latest reviews. Big thanks to my patrons and YouTube members for supporting the channel. If you want to get involved and gain access to exclusive videos and take part in Q&As, follow the link below.